Welcome to another episode of Season 4, Paige's Lessons. If you identify as someone who is ambitious, curious about life, and is a badass, you've come to the right place. This mini-series is specifically dedicated toward helping you explore your own unique healing journey. As a board-certified life coach, I made it my life's work to encourage and guide my clients to build a dream lifestyle and overcome any obstacles so they can feel more aligned with their most authentic self. As this season is titled The Power of Healing, in just 1 year alone, I personally have participated in several different modalities beyond talk therapy that have truly transformed my life, and I can't wait to share them with you. In every episode, I will interview an expert that is a master of their craft, and they will break down a specific way to heal through their unique services. As a mental health advocate, I'm so excited to have these conversations that will bring you closer to optimal health and well-being. Together, we will discover how we define healing, what does healing actually look like and feel like into practice. Make sure to listen to all the episodes of this season, stay open-minded, and remember, healing is a process, not an event. If we can take one step at a time, one feeling at a time, we'll walk through this discomfort and into the rest of our lives. Hey, what's up everyone? This is Paige Mitchell, and I am so grateful you tuned in to this season, specifically this episode. Welcome my guest, Val Davis. Val is a licensed therapist, breathwork facilitator, and Reiki 2 practitioner who is passionate about holistic health. She started her practice, Holistic Mountain Healing, LLC, and as a way to offer a variety of different mind and body-based practices to her clients and community. I interviewed Val because I have known her for about, 5 years. We worked together at an eating disorder hospital, and we were both behavioral health counselors. We did 3 12-hour shifts a week, and she was my partner in crime. You know, if you work in the mental health industry, if ever you were a nurse or just like worked in an outpatient or a hospital, we had these, 12-hour shifts that were really taxing, and working with this population was also very draining, rewarding and draining, a lot of burnout with this job. And so a lot of behavioral health counselors, her and I, and others, we kind of had this camaraderie. We had this, we're all in this together. We want to help our patients and be supportive and caring and counsel. However, we're fucking tired too. So we definitely trauma bonded in a way. Unfortunately, because of all the shit we went through with this job, but we are both on the other side, with all respect. It's just, that's where we originally met. And then we found our own business, our own voices. And I'm just so proud of her for continuing, obviously, therapy. And she's a damn good therapist, trust me. But also her fucking breath work practice now. I'm so excited for you to listen to this episode. Val and I are going to get into what the hell is breath work? What does a session look like? What does a session feel like? And what are the pros and cons of being in person and virtual? I've only done, because I've lived out of state, I've only done breath work with Val remotely. And it hasn't completely changed my life. I can't even imagine being in person with this woman, and the impact that it would bring, right? So there's definitely pros and cons of both. And also, bonus, this episode, we're really getting into an example of a session I had with Val. And I'm being a little bit vulnerable here in this episode because I want to share with you all, hey, this is what happened to me. And instead of just being oh yeah, breathwork is this is the science, blah, 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 okay, bye. It was, no, here are the things to learn, right? Here are the next steps. Here's the aftercare practices. Here's the process. But here's Paige's fucking journey. And when I was introduced to breathwork, I was really nervous. I didn't really fucking know what was going on. I was like, what do you mean breathwork? Well, we're breathing all the time. I had no idea of the intensity. And so I'm unpacking that also in this episode. And she is giving what she witnessed in the episode, which was really cool, just feedback to hear on the other side. And yeah, I'm just so stoked for you to listen to this episode. It's gonna be one of my favorites for sure, and you're gonna love Val. She is so down to earth, authentic, and just fucking real. Let's get into it. Hey Val, thank you so much for being here and saying yes to being a guest on the show. How are you feeling today?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Chat with you.
Yes, you're so welcome. Well, before we start our conversation, tell the listeners just a little bit about yourself. It could be very brief, where you live, what you like to do for fun, and then I'll wait for my next question.
Cool. Yeah. My name is Val Davis. I live in Colorado. I absolutely love just anything being outdoors, being in the mountains out here. So getting into like summer hiking, camping season, and just super passionate about my work. So really excited to talk about that today.
Yay. Well, a question I ask every guest is, what was one dream you had for yourself as a kid?
Ooh. I think just really like doing what I wanted, is kind of how it came through when I was a kid, like not being told what to do, kind of that like young Aquarian energy, right? But yeah, I think just like really making sure I did all the things that I wanted to do. And I think that's definitely come to fruition of like following my passions, going for the things that feel good. And I've been really fortunate with a lot of situations I've been in and opportunities I've had. So I think it's felt good so far.
Yay. It's fun when your little child self is like, thank you, Val. Thank you. I did it.
Right. Like trying different things, like even snowboarding. Like I always thought it was cool, but I grew up in Illinois, right? Like that's not a thing. So I did it. I made it. I'm here.
You made it to the Rocky Mountains, nonetheless. The best of the best.
Right. Right.
Awesome. Well, my goal for this season is to educate the listeners more on how we define healing. What does healing actually look like? And what does it even, what does it even mean? Healing has so much meat, if you will.
Yeah.
So my purpose and intention for every episode is to interview experts like you to share their words of wisdom as they talk about their craft and modalities. And I think it's really powerful to learn different ways to heal beyond just talk therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And you are also a therapist. So you understand the depth of talk therapy. But for me, and, so Val and I already mentioned earlier in this episode, but we work together as behavioral health counselors. So we understand talk therapy, kids. Listen, we know what we know. We get it. Therapy is amazing. We are pro therapy. And there are so many other magical integrations when it comes to your health and well-being. So let's get started with breath work. So Val, summarize for me what led you to this space of breath work.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's perfect based on what you just said, right? Like as a therapist, I love talk therapy, but in my own personal journey, there were limitations within that, right? And so our brains are amazing, our minds are great, and there's a lot of healing that can happen there, but there's like so much that actually needs to happen in the body and through the body. And so through my own journey, breathwork was something that really blew me away. And I just had these really profound experiences. And then on the flip side, as a therapist, I was like, man, I really just want to move to that next level of being able to support people in a body-based way. And so I was really like throwing some different ideas around like, oh, do I want to get certified in like EMDR, right? Like more on that therapeutic track. But I was really being called to like outside of that. Obviously, like I'm very passionate about holistic practices, and my personal journey has been a lot more outside of therapy than just talk therapy. So a great opportunity kind of presented itself, and I just said yes to it, and I'm so glad I did. And so it's been a really awesome journey.
Cool. I like that you said holistic healing, right? Mm-hmm. And I describe my, I mean, I think, let's get into just healing in general. Can we just break that down? So how do you define healing and what makes it important?
Yeah. I mean, I think of healing as like finding different ways to make the changes that you want in your life, whether that's internal or external, right? So that can be tending to old wounds, right? I think that's what a lot of people think of when you hear the word healing, is like there's these hurt or broken parts. But it's not necessarily just that. I think that's part of it, right? But it's also like maybe it's just integrating new information and like being more of who you want to be, connecting with that authentic part of you. Because unfortunately, I don't think we come into this world as a whole, like perfect healed being, right? There's so much like ancestral stuff and just worldly things, energetic things that happen. And so I think, yes, it can be tending to past old wounds, but it's also about this like becoming who you want to be at your like most authentic core.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm glad you touched on that, because that's like really important to me, is highlight heal doesn't mean you're broken. Heal doesn't mean something's wrong, that it has to go from problem to solution. Heal sounds like, what I'm learning through these interviews, it's more of a journey. It's more of, while you were talking, I was having this visual of like a piece of like Play-Doh just molding into, this is a snake, this is a circle. When you're just a little kid, you're forming, you're adapting, you're just like rolling with the punches. Sounds like healing to me, where you're just healing is adapting to life. And again, like you said, where it's aligned to your most authentic self.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's always changing, right? And that's like to your point too. It's not like there's no finish line. It's not like I'm healed. I did it. Like maybe there's certain like checkpoints along the way. Like, wow, I've really, I don't know, overcome this trigger or healed from this specific event. And that's a huge celebration. But yeah, it is much more of like an ongoing journey, like fortunately and unfortunately.
I love that. That's so true. Thank you for highlighting that for our listeners. It is not, I'm going to cross this off my list. Same with values, right? Like, it's not like, oh, I reached this value, I'm done, complete, goodbye. It's a life path, it's a compass. So with healing as well, I love that you said checkpoint. And you also said, maybe I healed from a trigger or an event where something was past tense. So in that regard, I've addressed my healing in that process. But hey, you think you're done with a trigger, but guess what? It's going to creep up on you in 5 years. And you're like, oh shit, I got some more work to do. Like, that's just what happens.
Yeah. It's like layers,
Layers. Love it. All right. So let's get into more about breath work and the relation with healing. So tell me more about breath work. Like, what does that actually mean? What does that look like into practice?
Yeah. So breath work is a pretty broad term, right? So really, by definition, it's like any intentional way of like manipulating your breathing pattern. So yes, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, breath work, like in yoga and those kind of things. Like, yes, that is technically breath work, right? So it can be box breathing, it can be progressive muscle relaxation, right? But the type of breath work that I do, I like to call it like a breath work journey. It's hard because you don't have like different terminology for it. But in this type of breath work, you are really focusing on increasing your oxygen levels, right? So we're doing certain breathing patterns where you're in this active breath for like 30 to 40 minutes, depending on the practice. Sometimes it can be integrated with like, a scream or kind of placing hands in certain parts of the body and certain cues. But ultimately it is about one, activating the subconscious mind. So that increase in oxygen, right? It kind of helps balance out what's happening in our brain. So we have this very loud frontal lobe that most of us are engaged with most of the day, right? It's our thinking part of our brain. It could be our overthinking part of our brain. But the cool thing about giving our brain more oxygen is that subconscious piece kind of comes forward. So we end up entering into our theta brainwave state. So we can also access this like in deep meditation. It's that brainwave you get into right before you fall asleep. Have you ever had, it's like you're not quite asleep, you're not dreaming, but sometimes you have these like creative ideas or like problem solving, and it's like, oh, I should get up and write this down, but I'm so close to sleep, right? That same brainwave state. So that's what we're accessing in breathwork. And it's cool because you can really reprogram subconscious thoughts really quickly when you're in your subconscious, right? So people have had experiences like this where they like do one breathwork journey and they give up cigarettes, or, they stop a stutter, or, they have these really profound experiences because it's almost this like going through this like portal of healing really quickly because you're fully in that subconscious mind. The other part that I really, really love is it's very somatic and body-based in the sense of when you manipulate your breath and really you're breathing kind of fast, again, that really high oxygen level, we're also dialing up our nervous system a little bit, right? So not all the way to fight or flight, but a lot of people notice like they tend to feel like a little anxiety waves when they're starting. And so what happens is your body gets to naturally kind of access its healing modality of releasing through the body, letting your nervous system finish the cycles of emotions, energy, trauma that gets stuck in the body without even having to talk about it, right? So that for me is like one of my favorite things when I'm moving through something heavy, working with even some of my clients or my community. It's like, I don't have to know a whole lot about you, but you can move through so much, right? Or my clients that I do really know, and we've hit a wall with talk therapy. It's like, okay, let's see what the body wants to do. Let's see what the nervous system wants to do. So it's really accessing these two beautiful parts that allow for very profound healing to happen at the same time.
Woo! Girl, take a breath. That was a lot.
I know. It was a
beautiful.
lot. I get hyped
but
about it.
I'm stoked. That's why I love talking to you, because you're so passionate about it and you're so good at it. And I know this because I've done sessions with you. And that's, I just like, while you were talking, how you said this is a journey. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what like a session is, right? Like I'm going to go to a session, surf session, right? Mm-hmm. That's a journey. A therapy session. Yeah, that's a journey. For some, it may just feel like hell for an hour. But it's kind of like perspective, right? So I love this journey you can have. You're not injecting anything. Right. You're not talking. You are literally laying down, but your body is doing work.
Yes.
And I love that you also have a background with eating disorder population and just body dysmorphia, body issues. So you really know from a therapist point of view, clinically, the importance of, wait a minute, let's see what the body has to say. You're giving the body, all of us, a chance to speak for itself. And that is just so powerful that you don't get in traditional therapy. Now, this isn't a podcast based on why breath work is better than therapy. I think we can use them in tandem, like what you're doing, right? So it doesn't need to be this like pro con, but I do want to say what a beautiful gift for the body to have permission to go through something, because the brain will not. If the brain knew what the body wanted to do, the brain would not do it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's amazing.
Yeah. And it's both, right? It's like we need to heal in the mind and the body. And I feel like for most people, we start in the mind because that's usually, like you said, it's like more accessible. It's a little bit more comfortable. It's still hard. Don't get me wrong. Like there's so much challenge and sometimes pain in that. But I feel like for a lot of people, what I notice, and I know definitely for myself, it's like it starts here and you can move like certain thoughts or challenge them or integrate new ideas and knowledge. But then at some point it's like, I need more. I need to go to the next level. And there's still these feelings that come up. And I feel like as a society, we are recognizing that and kind of waking up to like, wait a minute, we've swung a little bit too far on the head heavy like focus. So I think we're finding that balance because it is both.
Yeah, I agree. And can we talk a little bit about the science? Because you did mention that earlier that I wanted to touch on with like, we are increasing oxygen.
Yeah.
You're talking about theta and all that stuff. So I think I want to get to know more info on the science behind breath work? And is it like, I mean, if you can also walk us through the flow, right, of stomach, chest, then exhaling out with your mouth, like what is the science behind all of this method?
Yeah, totally. So I think it'd be helpful to kind of understand like where it came from a little bit too, because really this type of breath work started kind of in the name of, it's called holotropic or holotropic breath work, started back in the 70s. So after the war on drugs and kind of all of that research with psychedelics getting shut down, people wanted to understand, psychologists were really wanting to understand, okay, how can we access that subconscious mind that was allowing for a lot of healing? Like, how do we get to do that without substances? And so they figured out, hey, we get to manipulate our breath and do these kind of crazy things, right? We can kind of change our body's chemistry through our breath. Because when you think about your nervous system, right? I think about being triggered, so it's like when you get triggered, your blood pressure goes up, temperature rises, your breathing changes. None of that stuff, like if I sit and tell you right now, hey, lower your blood pressure. Hey, can you like lower your body temperature, right? They're not accessible, at least to most of us, but breath is something we get to manipulate. So we've learned over time through many, many research studies of like, whoa, we can do a lot of cool things here, right? So most people know like, hey, take a deep breath, slow down. Some people know a longer exhale can kind of, activate that rest or digest side of the nervous system. So it all started there and kind of beyond of like, okay, wait, there's a lot of healing that can happen in the subconscious. And that's that theta brainwave state, right? So for a lot of people, they do compare a breathwork journey to working with a mild form of psychedelics. Ketamine assisted therapies it's kind of booming right now. So people who have done both really say that they go hand in hand. So that's where it all started. It was like playing with oxygen levels and that mind-body connection between breath and your nervous system to see what we can do, right? So going over like the breathing pattern that I tend to use, like you said, so we use a 3-part breath a lot of the time. So it's a big inhale into your lower belly. We say like aim for about 80%, right? Of like filling it up as much as you can. Then another big sip into the chest, all through the mouth, and then a release. So as you know, from doing sessions, I say release because the goal is not exhaling all the air out. The goal is we just need to let out enough to start our next big inhale. Because again, the goal is lots and lots of oxygen. We are really trying to increase oxygen in the body because that's what activates that nervous system a little bit. And that's what allows us to flood our brain and turn on that subconscious part of our mind. So it's really cool just what the body's capable of and all the like programmed healing that we have. And fortunately, we live in a time where we have access to this information, and there's been a lot of amazing studies done to learn how we can do this in a way that like works for us.
I love just the word manipulation for me is a trigger in itself, but clinically it's proper because there's also, I did transcranial magnetic stimulation. And for that folks that don't know, for populations that have depression, OCD, they go to this outpatient facility, and I was a technician and I administered this treatment where we put helmets on them and it's magnetic pulses basically to the brain to rewire the neurotransmitters. So in a nutshell, we did have to provocate one of like the patients to activate that trigger or provocate. I think it's called provocate, which is not, it's kind of like manipulation in a way because you are re-traumatizing for just a minute so that then the treatment can, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense. But basically just talking about manipulation, like it's manipulating the breath isn't like a negative or like, because when we think of manipulation, we think that's like really fucked up. So manipulating the brain is just playing and experimenting. I think I'm just getting like really particular with language right now.
That's okay. And I get it. And yeah, like you're right. It is totally playing with. It's just like when we take control over and do something different with it, right? Because it's hard when you're doing that breathing pattern, like okay, belly, chest release, all in and out through the mouth for 40 minutes. There's people who hear that and are like, absolutely not, no freaking way, right? And it's like, but that's why it is work, right? It's breath work because it is this like intentional work you have to put in for a while. You know, you don't just like start this breathing pattern and slip into the subconscious journey, right? It's like, I know I've said this to you before, it's that roller coaster, right? That those first few songs, you're climbing up that hill and you're like, this is crazy. My mouth is dry. There's no way I'm doing this. You're so head heavy. You have to really work to let your body and brain kind of like fall into that, right? And that is that manipulation piece of like, you got to do this thing that's uncomfortable, right? You got to like not just be in your natural, relaxed breathing pattern for a while.
Oh my God, yes. You like just took me there. So let's get into, just for context, let's go through an example of a session I had with you. So we can kind of just do the play by play if someone's never had a breathwork session before. So Val, we did this all online, which also I do want to ask you that question, breathwork remote versus in person. Let's just clear that first before we get into my session. So what are your thoughts on remote breathwork versus in person? What are the different experiences or pros and cons?
Yeah. I've actually been pretty surprised both as like a breather and on the flip side as a space holder that how great virtual breathwork still is. Overall, I would say like they're one and the same because at the end of the day, your breath, your body, and your nervous system are what's really doing the work, right? The biggest components that I would say is like, there's of course no supportive touch. So when I'm in person with people one-on-one or in a group, if they're comfortable with it, of course, right? Like I will offer supportive touch. I'm also a Reiki practitioner. So that really goes hand in hand sometimes with breath work because it's very energetic. So like, that's really the biggest difference is just having kind of that human presence, and like physical touch. Right. So, and I, get to like control the environment more. So that may be a pro or a con to some people, right? They may feel more comfortable in their own home, in their own space. And even for a lot of people, like having the distance of being behind a screen allows them to really go for it more and feel safer, right? So I always tell people it's personal preference. I have people here in Colorado that I still meet with virtually. I do offer in person, but truly I would say that like both are incredible.
I agree. I've done both. I've done remote, I've done in person. I get self-conscious at first with a group of people when I'm doing it, a breathwork session. And that's also adding to the anxiety of like, oh, I don't want to do this, or like, oh, like I can't believe I have to do this for 40 minutes. And now I'm with a bunch of people and we're all thinking that, right? But then once you get in your flow, it's like, oh, there's no one else here. I don't really give a shit. But I do love the remote because A, I get to do it with you and we live in different states. And B, I do love the mute option because I feel very just free and I'm in the comfort of my own home. So like it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what like I always tell people to play with both in terms of like individual, whether that's virtual or not, like just by yourself. And the reason I love group is that one, sometimes when you're with people who like really go for it or like they emote a little bit more, it actually gives you that permission to do it too, right? So like sometimes that can be really empowering. And the other part is like going back to those brainwave states. One of the amazing things about being human and how energetic we are. So brainwaves are contagious. Right. So the cool thing about being in person in a group when you're doing breath work is like if one person in the room is more experienced and able to drop in pretty quick and like is really going for it, it's literally going to spread and make it easier for the other people to do it. Right. That being said, like, but to your point, sometimes when I'm in a group, like if I really hear someone like, I don't know, in it, I'll get distracted, right? That like empathetic part shows up, or, I do get self-conscious. So it's like, there's a lot of benefits to both and like pushing past your comfort zone in both. But overall, like I love them. I practice both because I need both that individual and that group experience in my own journey.
Yeah, it reminds me of like yoga, and when the yoga teacher is like, I want to hear you. And I'm like, ah, let that lion's breath, right? Like
Yeah.
it makes it so much better and like more permission, like you said, to
Mm.
just be yourself. But it can be hard though with a group of strangers you don't know. And
Yeah.
but no, this is all about going out of your comfort zone anyway, people. So we're doing.
Oh.
So yeah, let's get into my session. So Val started it with, she shared her on Zoom, she shared her screen and so that we can listen to music. And that was really nice to have. She has this like she always has great playlists on Spotify. So I always knew like I'm at least going to be listening to some good shit. And my breath was sometimes going with the music, which was kind of cool. I don't know if you designed it that way, but
Mhm.
yeah, so I really liked that. But for me, the experience and the beginning, and I've done breathwork before, but it's been a little minute. And so she cued or gave some feedback during the session as well of like, notice any resistance that's coming up. And for me, that is especially in the beginning.
Mhm.
The stories in my brain was, okay, we're doing this, you committed, it's you've done this before, you could do it again. And then I thought about the last time I did it, I had this like really big connection with feminine and masculine energy. So I was like, I wonder if that's going to come up, but I let that go. Right. But anyway, there was a lot of resistance for me. And so just remembering, okay, chest or belly, chest, mouth, like I just had to keep saying that over and over in my head. And then eventually my fingers started to tingle. And then the rest of my body just became dead weight, but it also became squirmy. And as I was getting faster, what was the metaphor you said? It was like you're in control of the gas or something.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I always tell people like, think of it like a gas pedal. You decide how much you can give it or pull back, right? That's the cool thing about it in comparison to like a psychedelic journey is like you take that, you're on the journey, right? But with breath work, it's like at any point in time, if your physical, emotional, or mental sensation is becoming too much, you can slow it down, right? You can either slow down your breathing or you can switch to nostril breathing. You're not going to like ruin your journey, but it's just a good way like to remind yourself like you are literally in control at all times, even though sometimes you could like leave your body but you can be like, oh, want to go back now.
Yes. Oh my God. I love that. So I mean, I don't know, call me a control freak. I don't know, but I love that. I love being able to be like, wait, I don't, this is voluntary. I don't have to
Mhm.
do this.
Yeah.
But yeah, so continuing from just like, can just remembering the pattern because I forgot. And
Mhm.
then I noticed, wow, I'm getting really thirsty. Should I stop and get water or is that going to interrupt it? Fuck it. Just kept breathing. I kept going. And then as I guess I was getting faster or I was speeding up the progression, I started to get a headache right in like the middle of like my forehead / left eyebrow, and it just was feeling really intense. But I was like, okay, keep committing even though you're in pain, maybe it'll brush through. And so I kept breathing. And Val is cueing me as well, like send some love. And what were some other things you were saying?
Mm,
um
yeah, I mean, I definitely remember that. I know there was at one point kind of like reminding you that you were supported. Like that was a big thing
yeah.
that came through in your last journey. It was like
um
disconnect from like whatever you want to call it, spirit, God, universe, the bigger picture kind of a thing. That was coming through. Cause yeah, I felt it too, kind of in that third eye. I remember telling you, it was like pulsating the whole time. Um, really to me, when I feel that, when I'm tapping into someone else's energetic field, it's like a good thing. Your third eye is connected to like intuition, right? Trusting yourself, and that's great. But it was this like pulsating feeling of you're too much there and needing to come back to like above you, the forces that are working way beyond yourself, and trusting that and surrendering kind of to the path and all of that. I remember that coming through pretty strong.
So it's more than for me. So I have an inner authority and an outer authority. So
Yeah.
I'm good with my my intuition, but it's more about trusting the process of what's out of my control.
Yeah.
Okay.
And not being afraid to let go of some of that control.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I have my notes. I put literally let go of control.
Oh my gosh, you wrote that down?
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Don't only rely on self, trust, surrender, let go of
Mm,
control, open up your connection, whatever way that means, right? Like
mm,
we all have different ways of feeling supported. So just a
mm.
reminder, I know that was coming through pretty strong with yours. And I know we talked about it too, of like your sacral and what you want and like owning that. And you're on this like really cool journey right now of doing those things. Um, and so it's like coming back to that connection of like, and don't be afraid to like ask for help or let go and just kind of trust. There was a lot of heart stuff coming through too.
I mean, that's the story of my life. Anytime I go to a healer, or a psychic, Reiki, any of that,
Mhm.
which it really inspired this podcast as well, as just this has been my California healing 1 year journey.
Yeah.
But that is a common thing, is the heart and throat.
Yes.
Main ones that no matter who I talk to, they could do some work for an hour, but they're like, I did stuff, but you got some more, girl. Like,
Uh,
but it's not, I don't know if you felt anything, or I don't know if, what do you call it? Feel anything, see anything,
mhm.
whatever, for the throat? Would anything in the throat come up?
Yeah.
Oh,
When I
of
tapped
course.
into, of course.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. When so for me, when I'm doing like kind of, I'm certified in distant Reiki, right? And so whether I'm distant or in person, I tend to feel other people's energy in my own body. Like that's really how it comes through really strong for me. So when I tapped into your throat, it like this is not in a bad way, but it literally felt like almost I was gonna like throw up. But not, and I don't mean that, I know that sounds like, oh great, but no, it just means a lot was coming through and the things that I wrote down. It was finding the balance in what needs to be shared and what is yours. So
Mm,
kind of this balance and expression was really coming through. And kind of like when that message kind of came through and I was trying to just like, kind of shift and like see if we can move some of that, it was this really, really big connection of throat and heart. And then even like almost like dipping down into sacral, so like identity, right? But it was really like, it was like, okay, throat, felt that initial wave, was like, whoa, there needs to be some balance here. But then immediately heart and throat are, uh, side by side in terms of our chakra system. So it was like heart became very activated. And so like moving down into that, it was like this idea, again, I feel like you're on this cool journey. And so there's a lot of the similar theme of like, don't forget to like let your heart lead.
mm,
And when I tapped into your heart space, I became really dizzy and like really noticed in my head, and felt a little, again, that tension in like third eye center. And so I wrote like, don't be afraid to drop into heart, let your heart lead. Like you need to stay grounded in body and not just like think your way through everything. And like, again, that control and that, so it was just kind of similar themes in that way. But all like good things, like you have a lot to express. And I think you are sharing a lot. And that's a really amazing thing. And I think you are right. You have this podcast, you have your different like pages and things like that. So it makes sense. And feeling
mm.
into what feels good, what feels authentic, when maybe are you pushing yourself to share in a way that doesn't feel good, or when you withholding when maybe you want to share.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I am, this whole like journey for me has become to like who I decide, being very selective with who I talk to, what am I talking to them about, who's in my circle now. Since I moved to California, I really didn't know anyone and had to start from scratch. And then even having, you know, Colorado friends, still some of them, like, they're not able to relate anymore. So, you know, but I think with you saying leading with your heart, I have been burned where I have shared something and it was dismissed, or I didn't share and really wanted to, but I had fear that they didn't want to hear it, or
Mhm.
second guessing and shit, you know? So yeah, just like going through my own journey of who do I decide to confine in, but also like that really hit me what you said of like, just what can I actually keep for myself?
Mhm.
Because I'm huge, obviously, with this podcast, just with videos I make, content as a life coach. Like, I want to be the role model. Hey, you can do this too. I fucking did it. You can do it. Even if your goal isn't to travel across the world, whatever goal you want, that's my job as a coach, is to support you. So I would like to role model that. But
Mhm.
sometimes, what is the line of like, I don't need to tell everyone everything. I could just have this for me.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is tough, is like kind of stepping into, like you said, like role model space, finding that balance. And sometimes it'll be more on the side of like, no, I want to share everything. And there may be other, times where that shifts a little bit. But yeah, I think it's cool you acknowledge too, like, I've been burned. So it's like, that's valid. And obviously you need to protect yourself. And like, maybe the scary thing that we all have to face, right, is like, don't shut all the doors with that either. Right.
Mhm.
Like, we sometimes put those walls up to protect ourselves, but then we're also closing doors on really great opportunities or great connections. And
Totally.
it's hard.
It is. I love that. Okay. Is there anything else that came up in that breath work that you felt, or anything else that I should know?
Mm, yeah, I mean, other things, definitely that need to lean into that feminine, more of that
Oh God.
receiving, that flow, that softening, which I know we chatted a little bit about. I know she's like really roaring and raging for you. But there was also a lot of like positive around that, like we said, with the sacral of like, you are owning a lot of your power and your desires in this really cool way. But again, so like with masculine, feminine, and I know you just had your other episode come out about this, but like, so instead of the doing and the planning and the very head heavy kind of masculine, right, like it kind of goes hand in hand with that, like leading with your heart and feeling into what feels good for you. Being kinder to yourself, that was a big thing that came in through heart, and kind of that throat was just like softening, gentleness, kindness, which most of us need all the time. And the only like, so I don't always have visuals that come through. But for you, it was like anytime that I like closed my eyes, and it was not me, but there were like hands that were reaching out to you. And it was
Oh,
like this two set of hands, and they looked masculine, but it was hard to know. But it was cool. It was like I put hands wanting to hold you or support you. So that to me was like it's in that same theme, right? Of like, I to me, it seems like maybe, again, and we all do this as humans, you're forgetting how supported you are kind of by the other side, and that you need to kind of just trust. And that also goes with that feminine of like letting yourself be held, letting yourself receive, kind of like taking a step back. So yeah, that was kind of the other like cool one, I thought.
oh God. That's so powerful. Mm, yeah, I mean, allowing myself to be held or protected, it's something I've always wanted, this level of protection, but I never received. So
Hmm.
obviously, hyper woman, right? Like, we are our own heroes. That's when the like badass CEOs step in. You're like, well, fuck, I gotta take care of myself then. So then we're
Hmm.
over dependent or over independent. But yeah, I think anytime I do a breathwork session, there's these themes of feminine. And so I shared with Val at the end of the session, like, you know, she cued me in like, hey, this is the last song and everything. And thank God I was on mute. But I felt this, she said roar, which is cute. It was a moan. But it wasn't a sexual moan. It was a low, kind of sounded masculine, but whatever. It was a low, just sound moan of just, and I couldn't control it. It just needed to come out, and it kept doing that in cycles. And I really believe there's this feminine, fiery, fairy like woman inside of me, spirit. And so anytime I'm doing breath work or I'm in the zone, I'm in the vortex, whatever, I'm tripping balls, whatever it is, she has permission. That is the only time she comes out. That's the only time she runs the fucking show, because otherwise the masculine part of me wants to tame her. She's not allowed. Or the masculine side knows how fucking dope and powerful she is. The masculine's like, oh fuck, put handcuffs on this bitch, because we don't know what she's capable of. But that's the thing, she's capable of anything. So there's a lot of feminine that I've pushed down for so many years due to a relationship I was in, to just survival, to starting a business. There's so many masculine like things that I took on that role for. So having the space to manipulate my breath to access her is such a gift. And even the whole day just singing. And I'm a singer. Like, I haven't been singing in years, but literally it's like it's just automatically singing. Like, I'm not like, I'm going to sing right now. Oh, like, no, it's just out. So she's doing something.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, I appreciate you sharing all that. And I think it's so relevant as a female in today's society, right? Of like, we live in a time where we're breaking out of like the suppression of women being able to step into the more masculine energy, right? And like, just to say it, like, the masculine and the feminine, they're both amazing, and we all need both, right? Like, men and women alike, we both need to embrace both sides of that energy. But like, we are moving through a time where like women, right, we're only allowed to be the stay-at-home moms. And so it's amazing that we have made so much progress. We do have female CEOs, and we still are fighting this battle of like equal pay and all this stuff. But to your point, it's like we've also maybe overswung a little bit, and we're losing touch with that feminine side of like, we need both. And that doesn't mean you can't be a badass CEO, you know, entrepreneur female, you know, and like not also maybe be a nurturing side. Doesn't mean you have to be a mom. It doesn't mean these like traditional roles, but it's just learning to tap into the energy of like, how do I just receive? How do I soften? How do I allow myself to also be taken care of? While, even though I know, yeah, I can do it my damn self. Yes, I can be an independent woman, but also fucking feels good to be held. It feels good to be supported. It feels good to like just be and play and create and be in that flow instead of like planning and doing. And so it's cool to hear you acknowledge that, because I think that's huge right now, kind of just in the collective as a female, you know. And that's, again, I mean, that's why I love breathwork, right? It's like, you can set an intention and sometimes that comes through, but most of the time it's like your body and your brain and your breath are going to be like, nope, this is what you need to go. Like, hey, Paige, you're still suppressing that feminine. She's going to come alive again.
Absolutely. And that's why I just started tearing up when you said that there's literal hands. Like, how beautiful is that? And I'm a big visual person, so that's a big deal to me. Well, let's go towards the end of the session and maybe tell the folks what's some like aftercare, you know, they just went through this journey with you. What do you tell your clients, how they're going to feel, what they should do, just other things to prep for?
Yeah. So big ones, that are kind of like general for anyone, no matter what their experience was, is just a lot of intentionality of what you are consuming, doing, taking in the rest of the day. So Breathwork's very energetic. And so you're very open, you move a lot comes through, whether it's in the body or in the mind. And so just like I tell people 24 hours usually, or at least, 100% until you go to bed that day. So it depends. Maybe you're doing breathwork in the morning, maybe you're doing it at night, but just being intentional with like, what am I eating? Who am I talking to? What kind of music am I listening to? What kind of podcasts am I listening to? What TV am I watching? So when I mean consuming, I mean literally at all the senses. What are you taking in, right? Who are you around energetically? So it can be really tough. Like I tell people, like, don't do a breathwork session if you can avoid it, right? Don't do a breathwork session and then like have to jump right into work or like go into a grocery store with fluorescent lighting and like, like when I'm always just like, don't look at me. Like I just need to go home. So really just being mindful of those things because you're very open, and those things that have a much bigger impact on you than maybe you're used to. And in terms of like food, I know we chatted about this. Like I tell people like eat what's good for the soul. So not necessarily needing to consume like what is the most healthy or best option, but like if that feels what's nurturing to you when you tap into your body, like what do I need? Because breathwork is a diuretic. So one, you might have to like go to the bathroom right away, and two, a lot of people come out of it and are like, I'm starving, so it's like feed yourself, but feed your soul. So for a lot of people too, like depending on what comes up, I'll say like tap into that, right? So if it's like more inner child stuff that comes up, some people see themselves or embrace themselves as a child. I'm like, lean into that, right? Throw on your old playlists, do something that really honors them, or if it's like, oh my gosh, I really had this, I don't know, a relative whose past came through, great, like connect with them, spend more time looking at photos, or again, listening to music, or like, so if there's something that very, I don't know, directly came through, I'll also encourage them to work with that in a way that feels good over the next couple of days. And the other big thing is just like cleansing, clearing, right? So again, it's very energetic. And as humans, our skin is kind of our portal for that. So our skin holds a lot. So I always recommend, if you can, salt bath. If not, salt shower. So salt shower is when you just, you're literally putting salt in your hand and then scrubbing the surface of your skin. So great exfoliator, feels good, but really it's energetic we're focusing on, right? So that can be smudging with sage, it can be crystals, it can be whatever that you personally kind of work with. If you're like, I have no freaking idea, shower, at least shower to kind of like cleanse and refresh, because just a lot moves. I also tell people, so it can be different for everyone, but again, this is nervous system work, right? So whether it's more just a body-based session or you're moving through a lot, like you had a lot of visuals or things like that, your nervous system got activated. So you're going to feel a little bit of like what I like to call just like an emotional breathwork hangover. So for me, when I'm done, I feel exhausted. I sleep like a baby. And then like the next day, I might feel still a little like lower or more like introverted. I kind of like go very inward after the next 24 hours. And then after that, it's like I become superwoman. I feel so aligned. I feel so energized. I feel so connected. So everyone's body and journeys are a little bit different, but it's very normal, especially if it's like a heavier, more emotional session. I've had people like, oh my gosh, I felt really like low for like a couple days, and then came out of that and we're like, oh my gosh, like I don't even get triggered by that thing anymore, so it can look and feel very different, but you just always extra love, tap into what feels good, right? Like more self-care is always going to be a recommendation.
Beautiful. Lots of self-care, aftercare tips.
Yeah.
I mean, those things you were saying, feed your soul, cleanse in a shower, those are just everydays. I love that.
Totally.
I love that so much. Cool. Well, is there anything else that the listeners should know or think about? They're listening to this episode and they're like, I'm interested in breath work. Like, what's my next steps? How do I know who's legit? Like anything you recommend for homework if someone wanted to look up breath work.
Yeah. I mean, I would just check out like breathwork practitioners in your area. If you're more of an in-person kind of person, and just reach out, whether it's to me or it's to someone else, like I care more that people try it than anything else. Just ask questions, feel it out. I think that's always the best practice with anyone that you're kind of hoping that they'll hold space for you, is just see if it feels like a good connection and come with questions. Like if someone's in a position where they are going to ask for an exchange to hold space for you, I would hope they would also be willing to like answer some questions so that you can feel comfortable and see if it's a good like fit.
Yeah, that's super important. And so are there any events that are going on, anything live, anything that you offer that the listeners can check out?
Yeah, so I'm always offering one-on-one or couples or small group private sessions, virtually or in person. So that's super easy to always like reach out or book with me through the link in my bio or my website. But I also will run public community events. I do like about 2 or 3 a month. So sometimes those are in person here in the Colorado area. Other times they'll be virtual. So July 29th is my next in-person Denver event. So that will be cacao, yoga, and breathwork all together. I love combining breathwork with other modalities. And I'm also going to be doing some virtual breathwork groups in July as well. So kind of need to stay tuned for those. Don't have a date hammered down quite yet.
Perfect. And where can the listeners go to connect with you?
My business is called Holistic Mountain Healing. So you can find me on Instagram at that tag or holisticmountainhealing.org. Either way, I am trying to be more present in the Instagram world, but my website's always a good place too.
Perfect. And you can find all of that in the show notes, so you don't have to memorize what Val just said. Thank you so much, Val, for this. I really appreciate the conversation of the breakdown of healing. What the hell is breath work? Your unique journey, how you got there. And you're just so genuine and special. And I also like appreciate too. I just feel so safe with you. Granted, we've known each other for like 5 years now. But yeah, I think that connection piece is really important. When you are doing anything healing related, is do you trust the person? And sometimes it's hard, right? You walk into a class and you don't know who it is, but listen to your gut.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just want to say thank you. And thanks also for sharing too, like what my session was like and the things that came up for you too. That was cool to hear.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me and coming with the great questions and letting your session be talked about. I know that's vulnerable.
Yeah, thanks, man. All right. Well, thank you, Val, for taking the time to share your words of wisdom. Thank you to my listeners out there. Remember, every single day provides a lesson. Go out there, dream big, and I'll catch you next week. Thanks so much for listening to Paige's Lessons with me, Paige Mitchell. You can find me on several social media platforms such as Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all using the same handle at paigemitchell.coach. Got any questions about the show? Send me an email at connect@paigemitchell.coach, located in the show notes. And if you really like the show, don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening to this so you don't miss an episode. Please make sure to leave a rating and review because I love hearing your observations, takeaway, and personal journey. Remember, every day provides a lesson. You got this.